Many are calling it a downward spiral. Burundi's worst crisis in a decade continues after 1 month of protests and a failed coup. President Pierre Nkurunziza, undeterred in his bid for a third term, Nkurunziza denies ordering the weekend killing of Zedi Feruzi, an opposition leader who was running for president, and has ordered a probe. But with at least one killed this Monday, the crackdown on demonstrations continues. Demonstrations where the protesters are arguing that his run for a third term is unconstitutional. As a former rebel leader, Nkurunziza shrugging off the partial suspension of aid by former colonial power Belgium. We're wondering how to break the impasse in an East African nation where the conflict's political, but with the same ethnic makeup as neighboring Rwanda. Fears of an escalation have prompted more than 110,000 to flee, with at least 30 dead from cholera in refugee camps. More broadly, in a region where, since the Rwandan genocide of 2 decades ago, the international community has invested heavily, with 20,000 UN peacekeepers in neighboring Congo, and aid that accounts to up to half the national budgets of countries in the area. How do you tackle the root causes of what seems like, to outsiders, a state of permanent tension? Today in the France 24 debate, Burundi's brutal standoff. With us to talk about it from Bujumbura, Willy Nyamitwe, senior advisor to the president. Thank you for being with us again here on France 24.
Thank you for inviting me.
We're also joined by David Gakunzi, president of the Paris Global Forum. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you very much.
She's a municipal councillor in the Paris suburb of Boulogne-Billancourt, and also the niece of one of the last kings of Burundi, Princess Esther Kamatari. Many thanks for being with us.
Thank you to invite me.
Retired UN General Dominique Trinquant knows that region well. Thank you for joining us again here in the France 24 debate. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. At least one killed in fresh protests. It happened in Muyange, that's 60 kilometers south of the capital. Catherine Viette has the latest.
Keeping up the pressure, protesters again took to the streets to voice their opposition to President Pierre Nkurunziza.
What we're against is the third term. All the killings by the police and the Imbonerakure should stop. The politicians who are against the third term are being killed like dogs.
Despite the backing of the country's constitutional court, many are angry the president has announced plans to run for a controversial third term in office. Opposition and rights groups say Nkurunziza's bid violates the Constitution as well as the terms of a peace deal that ended a 13-year civil war in 2006. Adding to the ongoing tensions, the targeted killing of opposition leader Zedi Feruzi, who was shot dead on Saturday by unidentified gunmen.
The assassination of Zedi Feruzi, the head of the opposition party Union for Peace and Development, is a sad and awful act. Today, we have gathered to contest the candidacy of President Nkurunziza.
Opposition parties have suspended talks with the government to protest the assassination. The move comes as the UN and the EU urge both sides not to allow unrest to derail negotiations.
Willy Nyamitwe, our correspondent, reporting earlier that the size of the protests a little bit smaller today than it had been in previous days in Bujumbura, but we again saw clashes, and we saw, of course, this incident outside the capital where another protester has been killed. How do you assess the situation this Monday?
Thank you for inviting me. The situation of today, we do regret that we've got some persons who have been injured and one person who has been killed. And we do also regret all the persons who have been killed in the previous days. This is the reason why we were in some political talks, a dialogue we have been helped by the United Nations, AU and ICGRR, and we have been trying to find out a solution to this crisis, because we cannot understand how people can say that they are protesting peacefully, but they are barricading roads. They are killing also people. They are destroying and burning cars and houses. So this is not a peaceful way to protest against another term of the president. This is the reason why we are appealing those persons in the streets to stop and to go to rallies, because now Burundi is organizing elections. People need now to go to elections in order to know who is going to rule this country in the next days. This is what I can say. So in some areas, we have these demonstrations that are violent, but in more than 99% of the country, it's a peaceful country and people are
99%?
99% of the country is peaceful. These are the figures that we have. But in some suburbs, we have these demonstrations.
David Gakunze.
During the apartheid system time, 90% of the territory was in peace also. The issue is that decade after decade, Burundians, we went through war. And then we went to Arusha. We made a peace treaty. And now we have somebody who come and say, this peace treaty, I don't care about it. I want to be in power again and again. That's the main issue. And we can't accept that, because if we start to accept that...
Well, his point is that the election by direct ballot only happened once. The first time he was named by parliament.
It's a confusion. You can't mix a number of mandates and the way of somebody is elected. These are two different things. And if he wants to do the good for the country, for Burundi, maybe he should say, okay, because war is there, so for the purpose of peace in this country, I renounce. The day he will say, I will not go no more for a third term, peace will come back in Burundi. But people are dying. People have been dying during all those days. 100,000 people who are outside, who are suffering. Why? Because one man wants to stay in power?
Peace talks suspended after the assassination of Zedi Feruzi, that opposition leader. Should both sides be getting back to the table? Should there be dialogue?
Dialogue, yes. No problem about dialogue. We have to find always solution through dialogue. That was the spirit of Arusha. But dialogue around what? First of all, about common values. And those common values are defined in the Arusha Agreement. It's sharing power. But you can't come and say, it's me who is making all the rules. I don't care about the common rules. The issue is there, the transgressions of common rules.
Esther Kamatari, how do you read the situation?
I think I just want to answer to Mr. Nyamitwe when he said, I'm sorry. To be sorry, it's always too late. Today, the system tried to against the constitution. We have a constitution. We have the agree from Arusha. We was fighting for so many years. We suffer. We have children. I don't know. It's not possible to go in the election in this situation. And when you imagine today, it was this little boy, like 12 years old. He was killed today. What do you think? This is a way to go to the election? But for me, and I'm not the only one to say, it's not possible to organize elections. And if you want a peace in that country, Mr. Nkurunziza have to say, I don't run for the third term.
All right. The Saturday night's killing of Zedi Feruzi and a bodyguard stoking fear in the Garara neighborhood where he lived. Let's listen to one resident of that neighborhood.
There were military soldiers here, but they did nothing to help. That's why right now we don't know who has killed him. But all we know is he's an important person, so this is something involving politics. So right now we're very worried that there's no security where we live.
Willie Nyamitwe, how's the investigation going into the killing of that opposition leader?
Yeah, the government has released a statement after the death of this opposition leader, and the government has started investigation to know what happened exactly. This opposition leader was living in one of these suburbs that are under violent demonstrations, and the police was not there. And the government has availed police bodyguards to protect this opposition leader. Unfortunately, he has been killed with one of his bodyguards, and the two others have been injured and are now in hospital. But people now are trying to manipulate the opinion to say that this opposition leader has been killed by security forces, but this is not true. We have to wait for investigations to be concluded, but what we can say is that this person has been killed by those who don't want these peace talks, this dialogue to continue and get to an end. Only this person can come and kill this person, because he was not a politician that can say was really powerfully against the government. He has been working with the government for a while, and also he was the only person recognized by the Ministry of Internal Affairs in Burundi. So he was not, I can say, an enemy, a really enemy of the government. And I was one of the persons who went to the place to see this man. He was a close friend of mine, and I've been working with him for a long period. And investigations now are going on, and we hope they are concluded very quickly to know what happened exactly, and those persons to be sought in order to be brought into justice.
Dominique Trinquant, what was your reaction when you heard the news of the assassination of Zedi Feruzi?
Of course, when a situation is blocked, and it is blocked for a few weeks now, there was a coup attempt which failed. So now the possibility is either at the negotiation or in the streets. And when you kill someone like that, you increase the pressure in the streets and you stop the negotiation at the table. So Mr. Djinnit, who is the representative of the UN, who is a very wise man who have been working with the African Union, is currently, is the end, a very important role, because he has to gather around the table people and try to deblock the situation. There will be a meeting, I think, next week of the head of state. You know that the coup happened when the president was in Tanzania. And so...
coup attempt.
Yes, the coup attempt, sorry. And so now this meeting will happen probably next week. And in the African way, I think it's very important to see what the head of state of the region will say. Because when European, American, or elsewhere say, this is the rule, I must say we are wrong. I mean, the rule must be in Bujumbura, in Burundi, and also with the head of state around the table. The discussion, which happened for weeks, is about Article 7 of the Arusha Agreement, which can be interpreted. I mean, the president can be right and the opposition can be right. It's badly written because it said that except for the first time, the president will be elected this way and this way. So except the first time. So one can say, I'm an exception, and the opposition say, no, the exception is not for that. So there is a way of discussing that. That must be solved around the table with the people who are able to discuss about that matter.
David Gakunzi, the motive, whoever killed Zedi Feruzi, was to polarize more further.
I don't know who killed Feruzi, but what I know is that the environment which is there produced that violence which killed Feruzi. So the first responsible is the person who produced that environment. All this started because of this issue of the third term. So why the issue is there, the third term. And when we are talking about the African heads of states, the issue is not African heads of state or European, etc. Democracy, it's a universal value. It's a universal norm. And sometimes I want to laugh when I hear some African leaders, when it comes to democracy, suddenly they become nationalists. They start to say, we don't have to get a lesson from anybody. No, the people in Burundi, the people in Africa, they are saying now, we don't want no more dictatorship. We don't want no more those presidents for life. No, we have to have rules, and those rules have to be the same for everybody, including for the leaders.
And how much pull then will neighboring states have next week, seeing as Paul Kagame of Rwanda, Mr. Kabila in DR Congo, they want to lift term limits for themselves, possibly?
I don't know what they want to do, but what I know is that today, President Nkurunziza is the first element for insecurity in Burundi and in the region. So it's an issue also for the security for the region. And I can tell to my little brother, Willy Nyamitwe, I think it's not too late. There are still solutions. There are still a way of coming out from this problem by preserving the interest and the lives for everybody. So take the path of wisdom, please.
Willy Nyamitwe?
Yes, let me emphasize one thing. We are in a democratic process. In democratic process, one has the right to run for a term as long as the constitution is not violated. So what we are talking here is that the members from the ruling party have decided, it was during a congress, to appoint President Pierre Nkurunziza to run for another term. And they call it a second term elected by the population, according to Article 96 of our Constitution. So, but the persons from the opposition parties and some of activists from the civil society organizations, they call it a third term and illegal term. So, if people think this is not accurate to our laws, they are peaceful ways to protest. But when we see people taking the path of violence, this is no longer democracy. So my elder brother Gakunzi says democracy is a universal norm. So let's go for universal norm and let's fight by ideas, not in the streets in a violent way, burning cars and destroying houses and killing people. This is not a political way, a democratic way of getting out of this crisis. And the person who brought everything here in these problems is not President Nkurunziza, but those persons in the street.
All right, we're gonna get reactions from the panel right after we have to take a very quick break. We'll be back. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.